Hi, my name's Robey Jenkins and I'm the author of Horizon Wars, new miniatures war game that's coming from Osprey Games in April 2016. Now, a lot of people have been asking me whether the game is going to be compatible with their existing miniatures, and I wanted to make a short video to explain that yes, they really are, and also to give you some kinds of a heads up as to what sorts of army you can build and how you might go about doing it. To do that, I've taken a few miniatures out of my collection that I've got here, and I'll be going through them and showing you how to build an army. In the first instance then, like most miniatures games that have some sort of point system, you decide on how many points you're going to build your army to. Now in this case, I'm going to start by building a 16-point army. The easiest way to build any army is to start with the mechs. Mechs, of course, are the big stompy robot characters, and we all love those in sci-fi games. The first element that you pick for an army is the command headquarters. Now, the command headquarters, or CHQ, that you choose is going to dictate something about the character of your army, which is why mechs are a good place to start. Because if you were to pick a mech as your CHQ, basically it has no further effect on the army. It's very straightforward, very vanilla. So I'll start by picking a large, heavy mech as my command headquarters. Heavy mech has a presence in the game, and that's a stat that describes basically its gravity on the battlefield and how impactful it's going to be. Has a presence of 3, and 3 is the number of points it costs. So there it is, 3 points to get us started. To that I'll add a couple of medium mechs. These have a presence of 2, which again means they're bigger than a presence 1 element, but not quite as frightening as a presence 3. And again, they're 2 points each. So far we've got 7 points in this army. I think I'm going to fill that out with a squadron of tanks. They're described in the rules as heavy cavalry to allow for the fact that there are many other things that can fulfill the same sort of battlefield role other than tanks. But in this case, I've got a nice couple of tanks. These mechs, by the way, are from EM4 Miniatures. They come as plastics and they're really very cheap indeed. I like them a lot. The tanks, meanwhile, are metals. They're from Brigade models. And again, they're a really nice range of very good value entry-level 6mm miniatures. So I'm going to add 2 tanks. Now, even though those tanks look quite a lot smaller than the mechs next to them, they've got very large guns and they're very accurate and fast. And so as a result, they too are presence 3, which means in addition to my 7 points that I got in mechs, I've just added another 6 points in tanks, which has taken me up to 13 points already. Looking at what I've got left now, I've got 3 points to fill out. To that end, therefore, I'm going to add 3 light infantry elements. These are presence 1, which means they're 1 point each. So onto my 13 points I already have in mechs and tanks, I've added another 1, 2, 3 points, giving me a 16-point army. And there it is. That is a straightforward basic 16-point army with a heavy mech as the command headquarters. Oh, the light infantry, by the way, are from they're from War Games Emporium, from their EMP Games range. There we are. I knew I'd remember eventually. So those are from War Games Emporium. So that's the 16-point army, but it does get a little bit more complicated, or it can. For example, let's suppose instead of choosing a mech as my command headquarters, I wanted to choose one of the conventional elements. Now there are several good reasons why I might want to do that. For a start, the command headquarters becomes free. Well, that's attractive. So let's begin then. Let's say that tank now is my command headquarters. The mechs are still 3 and 2 points each, as before, 7. The other tank is also still 3 points, 10. But that command headquarters tank has just become free. So I'm only at 10 points. Great. However, light infantry tend not to work very well alongside tanks. As a result, they become more expensive. Even though they remain presence 1, they gain 1 point in cost. So those are each 2 points. Now, you'll have got ahead of me, I'm sure. 10 points plus 3 lots of 2 points is still 16 points. So I've still got a 16-point army there. But having picked my tank as a command headquarters, is that necessarily my best use of my points? I suspect not. Let's put the light infantry aside and go for another option. Tanks work well alongside heavy infantry. They have similar tactics: heavy armour, heavy weapons. And heavy infantry also have a much better survivability than a heavy cavalry tank, because they have integral organic assets that can help them to recover and fight on even under heavy fire. As a result, heavy infantry, which are presence 2, only cost a heavy cavalry command headquarters 1 point each. So those 3 heavy infantry, which would normally have been 6 points to our heavy mech command headquarters, now become 1 point each. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 3, 1, 2, 3. 13 points. I still have 3 points to spend. What could I spend that on? Well, I could add another mech. I could add another tank. Slightly different design, same manufacturer, also brigade models, by the way, as are the heavy infantry. Or I could do something else. I could, for example, add an artillery element, or I could add a recon or a special forces element. All of those have different points costs depending on your choice of command headquarters. In this case, because it's a heavy cavalry CHQ, I'm going to add another tank. Now, you're probably thinking, why would I not take a tank as a command headquarters? After all of a sudden I haven't just got light infantry, I've got heavy infantry and another tank. Well, to an extent that is the point. Part of the game is about working out how to optimize your miniatures collection based on your selection of command headquarters. But different missions are going to favour different sorts of tactic, and light infantry can be exceptionally good in numbers at swarming and occupying buildings and preventing the enemy from breaking through. Heavy infantry tend to be fielded in smaller numbers, as you'd see in a different shape of army. Other options for command headquarters, of course, include heavy infantry themselves, in which the heavy cavalry become a little cheaper. But you can also take mobile infantry, which is, for example, infantry with jump packs, or infantry on bikes, or infantry in IFVs. Or you could take a special forces command headquarters. They all have different influences on the composition of the army that you end up putting together. I hope that has given you something of a little insight as to the variety and breadth of army composition that you can afford to make in a game of Horizon Wars. But before I move on, there is one other point I want to make. The command headquarters doesn't just come with a free command headquarters. The command headquarters also brings 3 special rules in his own right. For one thing, he gains the ability to guide fire. That is, if you've got another element with the indirect fire rule, the 2 synergize, and the guide fire element can measure its range to enemy targets and use the firepower of the indirect element. It also comes with a rule called Chain of Command, which allows it to activate other elements using its own action tokens. Very helpful if you've got to move quickly or put an extra round of firepower into that vulnerable enemy target. But the most important rule it comes with is the third one. It's called Command Resources. For every 2 conventional elements you include in your list, and by conventional elements I mean everything apart from mechs and aircraft, you gain 1 command resource. So in this case, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 conventional elements. So that gives me 3 command resource points. I can then spend those either on upgrading the stats of the elements I've got, or of adding various upgrade options to them, such as the ability to booby-trap terrain. In this case, I've got a good selection here, because the one restriction on command resource is that once you spend it on one element, you've got to spend it on every other element of its type in your army. So if I spend a point upgrading one of my heavy infantry elements, I have to make sure the other two are upgraded as well, and the same with the heavy cavalry. In this case, this is a well-composed force because I have 3 elements of each. So with my 3 command resource points, I know I'll be able to upgrade either all of the heavy cavalry or all of the heavy infantry. I could, of course, get rid of some of my mechs, bring in some additional elements, gain even more command resource points to upgrade even more of my elements. Mechs, on the other hand, they don't get command resource. They're already really quite good. Aircraft too are a bit of a special case, so they don't get command resource points either. Also worth pointing out, an aircraft can never be your command headquarters. I'm afraid it simply doesn't stick around on the battlefield long enough to ever take command. I hope that's answered some of the questions you might have had about how you can adapt your existing miniatures collection to playing Horizon Wars when it's released. The release date, for those that haven't picked it up, is going to be on the 21st of April for the UK, and a couple of days earlier on the 19th of April in the United States. If, however, you're lucky enough to be at Adepticon or at Salute in the UK, you'll be able to get pre-release copies there. And at Salute, I should be there as well, signing copies. So please, if you are in Salute, do make a point of coming along to say hi.